Peter Abelard was born around 1079 in Le Palais, a small village in Brittany, France, into a noble family. His family's wealth and status allowed him the privilege of receiving a quality education. Abelard's early life is crucial in understanding his later intellectual development. His family hoped that he would take on the role of a knight and follow the traditional paths of chivalric honor and military service. However, Abelard was not content with this destiny. Instead, he was drawn to the intellectual life, a path that would eventually make him one of the most influential thinkers of the medieval period. From an early age, Abelard demonstrated an insatiable curiosity and a deep commitment to learning. At just 12 years old, he left his family and journeyed to Paris, a bustling intellectual center of the time. In Paris, Abelard entered the famous school of the great philosopher and teacher Roscelin, a proponent of nominalism, the view that only particular objects exist and that general terms like humanity or tree are mere linguistic conveniences rather than objective realities. However, Abelard quickly surpassed his master's teachings and began to forge his own intellectual path, developing a more sophisticated and independent philosophical vision. By the age of 20, Abelard had already gained recognition as a brilliant scholar. His intellectual abilities were soon recognized by a wide range of students, and his fame as a philosopher and theologian quickly spread across Europe. As a young man, Abelard was driven by an ambition to not only master the teachings of the great thinkers before him, but to challenge them and expand upon them. This rebellious spirit would define much of his life, as he frequently found himself at odds with established authorities, whether ecclesiastical, intellectual, or social. Abelard's early education in Paris would be the foundation for his later work in logic, ethics, and theology. His experiences in the intellectual circles of Paris also shaped his lifelong commitment to rigorous intellectual debate, and his tendency to challenge and question traditional ideas, both in philosophy and in religion. Intellectual achievements and contributions. Abelard's intellectual contributions were groundbreaking, particularly in his approach to philosophy, theology, and ethics. His works brought together rigorous logical reasoning, ethical inquiry, and theological reflection in ways that had not been done before. His ideas were controversial, pushing the boundaries of accepted thought in the medieval church and beyond. The following sections explore some of his most significant intellectual achievements. Dialectical method and sic et non. Perhaps the most important of Abelard's intellectual achievements was his development of the dialectical method, which became a hallmark of scholastic philosophy. The dialectical method involves resolving contradictions in existing arguments or texts by comparing and analyzing opposing viewpoints in a structured way. Abelard's goal was not merely to defend one side of an argument, but to draw out the deeper truths that could be discovered through the careful, reasoned resolution of differences. One of the key works where Abelard applied this method is his sic et non, yes and no, a text that compiled a series of contradictory quotations from church fathers, the Bible, and other theological writings. In sic et non, Abelard didn't seek to provide simple answers or dogmatic conclusions but rather presented the contradictions and left them for the reader to ponder. His aim was to demonstrate that theological ideas could and should be rigorously examined, and that the process of resolving contradictions through dialectical reasoning would help clarify complex theological issues. The dialectical approach in sic et non laid the foundation for the scholastic method, a way of thinking that would dominate medieval intellectual life for centuries to come. Abelard's openness to the possibility that contradictions in theological thought could be resolved through rational debate was revolutionary for his time. The work challenged the status quo by presenting theological questions as matters open to intellectual inquiry, rather than as fixed and unchangeable doctrines. This focus on dialectical reasoning eventually influenced later figures such as Thomas Aquinas, who would develop his own system of scholasticism based on similar principles. Ethics and the concept of intention. Abelard's contributions to ethics were equally important. One of his most significant contributions was his development of the concept of moral intention. In his works on ethics, such as Ethica and Cito te ipsum, Know Yourself, Abelard argued that intention behind an action is the key determinant of whether the action is morally good or bad. This was a radical departure from the traditional views of morality, which emphasized the outward performance of specific acts, regardless of the actor's internal motivations. For example, if a person performs an act of charity, say, giving money to a poor person, but does so only to gain social status or recognition, Abelard would argue that the act itself, while outwardly good, is morally compromised because the intention behind the action was selfish. Conversely, an action that might outwardly appear to be morally neutral or even negative, such as withholding a charitable donation, could still be morally good if the intention behind it was to serve a higher moral or spiritual purpose. Abelard's focus on moral intention marked a significant shift in the way ethics were approached in medieval philosophy. Prior to Abelard, morality was often framed in terms of legalistic rules and external actions. Abelard's work, in contrast, focused on the inner disposition of the individual and the personal motivations that led to specific actions. This emphasis on intention had far-reaching consequences for Christian ethics, contributing to later theological discussions on conscience, free will, and moral responsibility. Faith and reason, reconciling two worlds. Abelard's treatment of the relationship between faith and reason was another of his significant contributions. At the time, there was considerable tension between religious faith, which was seen as a matter of divine revelation, and human reason, which was viewed as a product of human intellect. While many theologians and church authorities argued that faith should take precedence over reason, Abelard believed that the two could and should complement each other. In his work Theologia Christiana, Christian Theology, Abelard argued that human reason could be used to help interpret and defend the mysteries of faith. For example, Abelard believed that reason could help clarify the nature of the Trinity or the Incarnation, even though these were central mysteries of Christian belief that transcended human understanding. He maintained that reason should not be in opposition to faith, but rather that reason could provide a framework for understanding and articulating faith in ways that were both intellectually rigorous and spiritually fulfilling. Abelard's views on faith and reason were ahead of his time, and they laid the groundwork for later theological developments, particularly in the work of Thomas Aquinas. Aquinas, who would live a century after Abelard, would famously argue that reason and faith are not only compatible but that reason can be used to strengthen faith. Abelard's insistence on the compatibility of reason and faith helped shape the course of Christian theology in the Middle Ages and beyond. The story of Abelard and Héloïse. Perhaps the most famous, and tragic, aspect of Peter Abelard's life was his love affair with Héloïse, a brilliant and educated young woman whom he tutored in philosophy and theology. Their love story is one of the most poignant and enduring tales of medieval history, and their correspondence has provided later generations with a unique insight into both their intellectual lives and their personal emotions. The affair and its consequences. Abelard and Héloïse's relationship began when Abelard was in his 30s and Héloïse was a young woman of exceptional intelligence and beauty. As a scholar, Abelard was immediately drawn to Héloïse's intellect, and the two quickly became intellectual partners, engaging in deep discussions about philosophy, theology, and the nature of love. However, their relationship soon grew into a passionate love affair, which was initially kept secret. Their relationship became public when Héloïse's uncle, Fulbert, learned of the affair and was furious. He sought to punish Abelard for dishonoring his niece, and in a brutal act of vengeance, Fulbert had Abelard castrated. This traumatic event had a profound impact on both Abelard and Héloïse. After the attack, Abelard became a monk, and Héloïse entered a convent. Despite their separation, Abelard and Héloïse continued to correspond over the years. Their letters are perhaps the most famous and valuable records of their relationship. In these letters, they reflect on the nature of their love, their personal suffering, and the complexities of their intellectual and emotional bond. While Abelard expressed guilt and regret for their affair, Héloïse maintained her love for him and struggled to reconcile her passion with her religious vows. Their relationship, while tragic in its outcome, also highlights the powerful connection that can exist between intellectual and emotional intimacy. Abelard and Héloïse's letters demonstrate a remarkable intellectual partnership that transcended their romantic feelings, as they discussed issues of love, philosophy, faith, and suffering. The depth of their intellectual and emotional bond continues to resonate today, offering valuable insights into the complexities of human relationships. Conflict, controversy, and church politics. Abelard's life was marked by repeated conflicts with ecclesiastical authorities, particularly in matters of theology and philosophy. His most famous clash occurred when he was condemned at the Council of Sens in 1140 for heresy, largely due to his teachings on the relationship between faith and reason. Theological controversies. Abelard's ideas were often at odds with more conservative theologians like Bernard of Clairvaux, who was a strong advocate for mysticism and the primacy of faith over reason. Bernard and his followers accused Abelard of undermining church doctrine by using human reason to question and interpret theological matters, something that was considered dangerous by many at the time. The tension between Abelard's rationalism and Bernard's mysticism would culminate in a theological feud that split the intellectual community of the time. At the Council of Sens, Abelard was formally condemned for heresy, and his teachings were declared incompatible with Orthodox Christianity. Although Abelard was excommunicated for a time, he continued to teach and write, and his ideas remained influential long after his death. Abelard's experience highlights the tension between intellectual freedom and religious orthodoxy, a struggle that has played a significant role throughout history. His challenges to church authority and his intellectual independence demonstrate the difficulties faced by scholars who seek to push the boundaries of accepted thought. The philosophical and theological legacy of Abelard. Despite the controversies and challenges he faced, Abelard's contributions to medieval philosophy and theology had a lasting impact. His emphasis on reason, dialectical reasoning, and the ethical significance of intention laid the groundwork for future developments in both Christian philosophy and Western intellectual history. Abelard's commitment to intellectual rigor and his determination to reconcile faith with reason helped shape the development of scholasticism, a school of thought that dominated the Middle Ages. His approach to resolving contradictions in theological texts and his insistence on using reason to understand theological concepts would influence later thinkers like Thomas Aquinas. Life lessons from Abelard's journey. Abelard's life is a rich tapestry of intellectual achievements, personal struggles, and ethical dilemmas. There are numerous valuable lessons to be learned from his journey, many of which continue to resonate today. 1. Intellectual curiosity. Abelard's intellectual curiosity never wavered, even in the face of intense opposition. His quest for knowledge led him to challenge existing beliefs and think critically about fundamental questions. Lesson: cultivate an insatiable desire to learn and question. Intellectual growth comes from the willingness to push boundaries and engage with difficult ideas. 2. The power of reason. Abelard's commitment to reason as a means of understanding faith and ethics demonstrates the profound power of human intellect. His work reminds us that reason is not a threat to faith, but rather a tool that can deepen and strengthen belief. Lesson: embrace reason as a powerful tool for understanding. Intellectual inquiry can lead to a more profound understanding of faith, truth, and morality. 3. The importance of intention in ethics. Abelard's focus on intention as the key to moral action teaches us that true morality lies not just in what we do, but in why and how we do it. Lesson: consider your motivations and intentions when making decisions. The true morality of an action is rooted in the heart of the actor, not just the outward performance. 4. Love, suffering, and growth. Abelard and Héloïse's relationship demonstrates the transformative power of love and intellectual partnership. While their love story was marked by tragedy, it also helped both individuals grow intellectually and emotionally. Lesson: love can shape and define us, and relationships, though sometimes painful, offer opportunities for profound personal growth. 5. The role of perseverance. Despite facing excommunication, personal suffering, and public criticism, Abelard never gave up on his intellectual pursuits. His perseverance in the face of adversity is a testament to his commitment to knowledge. Lesson: perseverance is essential. Even when faced with failure and hardship, continue to pursue your goals with determination and resilience. 6. The complexity of moral choices. Abelard's life shows us that ethical decisions are rarely simple. His life was marked by moral ambiguity and difficult choices, but his writings about intention and personal responsibility continue to guide ethical thought. Lesson: ethical choices often involve complexity and nuance. Reflect on your actions carefully and consider the long-term consequences. 7. Intellectual freedom and authority. Abelard's conflicts with the church authorities remind us that intellectual freedom and the pursuit of truth are sometimes at odds with powerful institutions. His challenges to established thought are emblematic of the struggle between intellectual freedom and authority. Lesson: stand firm in your beliefs, even when they challenge established norms. Intellectual freedom is often the birthplace of innovation and progress. 8. The consequences of ambition. Abelard's ambitious nature drove him to become one of the most renowned scholars of his time. However, his ambition also led to personal and professional consequences, particularly in his relationships and his clash with the church. His desire to challenge established ideas and become the leading intellectual of his era ultimately alienated him from powerful figures, including Bernard of Clairvaux and other church authorities. Lesson: ambition, while a powerful motivator, can have unintended consequences. It's important to balance ambition with wisdom and to consider the potential personal and relational costs that might come with pursuing your goals. 9. The importance of humility in learning. Although Abelard was undoubtedly brilliant, his story also teaches us about the importance of humility in the intellectual journey. Despite his accomplishments, Abelard's life was marked by moments of failure, including the humiliating castration that came after his relationship with Héloïse. The intellectual world's rejection of his ideas at times and his personal tragedies forced him to grapple with his own limitations. His eventual humility and retreat into monastic life show that true wisdom often requires acknowledging one's vulnerabilities and flaws. Lesson: humility is key to personal and intellectual growth. Embrace the fact that failure and limitations are part of the learning process, and allow these experiences to shape you into a wiser and more compassionate individual. 10. The power of forgiveness and redemption. Despite the challenges Abelard faced, including his relationship with Héloïse and the harsh punishment he received from her uncle, Abelard and Héloïse's eventual correspondence shows the possibility of redemption and forgiveness. While their relationship ended in personal tragedy, their deep emotional bond never fully dissolved. Both Abelard and Héloïse, even after their separation, continue to reflect on and support each other through letters. Abelard, in particular, sought forgiveness from God and from Héloïse for his mistakes, and their correspondence reveals the spiritual healing that can come from both self-forgiveness and the forgiveness of others. Lesson: forgiveness, both of oneself and others, is an essential part of the human experience. Healing and redemption are possible even after making grave mistakes, and we can always seek reconciliation and personal growth, no matter how challenging the situation may be. Conclusion: Peter Abelard's life was one of intellectual brilliance, passionate love, personal tragedy, and profound theological and philosophical contributions. His journey, marked by both triumphs and hardships, offers timeless lessons that resonate across generations. From his pioneering work in dialectical reasoning and ethics to his personal struggles with the Church and his turbulent love affair with Héloïse, Abelard's story is one of intellectual courage and emotional depth. Abelard's life teaches us that the pursuit of knowledge is both a noble and dangerous endeavor, one that requires a balance of ambition, humility, and perseverance. His philosophical contributions, especially in logic, ethics, and the relationship between faith and reason, laid the groundwork for future generations of scholars. At the same time, his personal story reminds us of the complexities of human relationships, the power of forgiveness, and the importance of understanding our own moral intentions. Despite the controversies that surrounded him, Abelard's legacy endures not only because of his intellectual achievements but also because of the way he navigated the difficult moral and personal challenges that life presented him. His story is a testament to the enduring power of the mind and spirit, as well as a reminder that the pursuit of truth often comes at great personal cost. Abelard's life, full of both brilliance and conflict, ultimately serves as a reflection of the broader human experience, a struggle to reconcile intellectual aspirations, personal desires, and the moral complexities of life. By studying his life and lessons, we can gain insight into our own journeys, learning to balance ambition with humility, reason with faith, and passion with responsibility.